Well, hello. Happy Wednesday to you, and welcome back to Element. You're known, valued, and loved here, and you're probably seeing some new faces. You're probably seeing some old faces that are familiar. You're probably seeing some coaches that you haven't talked to in a while. It's good to be together. Living in this spiritual rhythm of being in community, that is how we grow. And we as a church also want to make sure that we are in the rhythm of connecting with God on a daily basis. We do this through something that we literally call rhythms. It's the Monday through Friday opportunity that all of our church gets together and learns the scripture that we're going over for that Sunday. So you can go on the Church Center app. You can find it on the Rhythms tab. You can go through it on that. If you don't have a smartphone, don't worry about it. You have another option. You can go to our website, thirdcityc.org/students, click on the Rhythms at the top of the page, and you can do that on your parents' phone. You can do it on your school laptop, whatever you need to do to be in connection with God on a daily basis. That's so healthy for us. Today, we're talking about worship. We're reading this story in Mark chapter 14 of a woman who brought something that was probably the most valuable thing in her life and gave it as a gift to Jesus, essentially taking what was on the top shelf of her life, putting it somewhere else and putting Jesus on the top shelf of her life. It's about worship. A lot of times we think worship is just the music part of a worship service, right? But worship is a posture of your heart. It's a lifestyle. It's about what gets the most of your attention. It's not whether we worship or not, it's what we worship. What gets the most of you? That's a pretty good sign of what we worship. The trick is, and I'll explain this a little bit more, is if we worship anything besides an eternal God, we're going to be really disappointed in life when those things fail us. So let's look in Mark chapter 14. Let's read this together, and then let's talk about it a little bit. Here we are, Mark chapter 14, verse 1. I'm in the New Living Translation version here, NLT, if you want to look on your phone. It was now 2 days before Passover and the festival of the unleavened bread. And the leading priests and the teachers of the religious law were still looking for an opportunity to capture Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the time of Passover celebration, they agreed, or the people may riot. So think for the Jewish people, for the Jewish nation, this was like the Super Bowl. Like everybody was coming together at the temple to do this whole amazing thing, okay? So a lot of people are there. Verse 3, meanwhile, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon, a man who had previously had leprosy. While he was eating, a woman came in with a beautiful alabaster jar of expensive perfume made from essence of nard. She broke open the jar and poured the perfume over his head. Seems kind of weird, but in those biblical days, anointing a head with oil was actually honoring, paying tribute to, exalting something. It was seen as a metaphor of blessing, okay? Some of those at the table were indignant. Why waste such expensive perfume, they asked. It could have been sold for a year's wage and the money given to the poor. So they scolded her harshly. I feel like they weren't saying this out loud in my mind. They were more like bickering to each other at the table, you know? And Jesus, who knows everything, I wonder how embarrassed they were when they realized Jesus knew what they were doing. And Jesus goes, leave her alone. Why criticize her for doing such a good thing to me? You will always have the poor among you, and you can help them whenever you want to. Basically saying, if you want to go help the poor, go do it. Instead of putting her down because you think you have a better way of worshiping me or whatever. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. That's so important today. She did what she could and has anointed my body for burial ahead of time. I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deed will be remembered and discussed. He was right, because now we're talking about it. Verse 10, then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went to the leading priests to arrange to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted when they heard why he had come, and they promised to give him money. So he began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus. Also an idea of worship there. So I think one of the best ways to explain how we worship and what we worship in our lives is imagining a bookshelf. Just a shelf on your wall or something that on the bottom would have the not so important things to you, kind of the, mundane or whatever. And the higher you get on that bookshelf, the more important those things become. And on the top shelf is the most important. If that got taken away, you wouldn't know who you were. It's that important. The problem that we have, and the things that get in our way of worshiping God with our whole hearts, our whole lives, is that we put things on that shelf, on the top shelf, that shouldn't be there in the first place. There's things in our lives where if that got taken away, or if I lost that thing, I wouldn't know who I was. For some of you, that's sports. For some of you, it's show choir. For some of you, it's band. For some of you, it's your academics. For some of you, it's a relationship you're in, whatever it is. I wouldn't even know who I was. Your video games, your iPhone, whatever it is. If someone took that away, I wouldn't know who I was. That is the identifier of the thing that you're worshiping instead of God. If you lost that thing. Here's the example. In high school, I've told you this before, I was in rock bands, metal bands, loved that stuff, okay? I was a freshman and all my buddies who were in the band with me were juniors. And so as we ascended in grades, they all left and graduated. And I was just left alone. And for 2 years of my high school career, it was like I was the metal band guy. And then all of a sudden I had no band. Who am I now? You know, that was top shelf in my life. And once that disappeared, I literally didn't know who I was. I was like, I have to figure out how to recreate myself because I had gotten so much of my identity from that. And it was a very confusing time for me. And you've probably felt this too. Like, I imagine for you, like, there was a breakup that you had in your life. And once that person was gone, you didn't know who you were. Or maybe a friend fall out and that was top shelf, but now that that's gone, you don't. Or maybe you had an injury in sports and like that was top shelf. And now that you can't play this season, you're like, I don't know who I am. That's how you identify what's wrongfully on the top shelf where Jesus should only sit. So this woman probably took what was the most expensive thing she owned. It was like probably her security in terms of she knew she could trade this in if she ran short on food or had to pay a bill or whatever. But instead, what she did was she took that thing off the top shelf, offered it to God as a blessing, as saying, I love you, Jesus. You have my whole heart. And effectively putting Jesus on the top shelf. She traded in something that could be stolen, lost, taken away, all those things for something that could never be taken away. And it's so funny, for a lot of us, we get so afraid of doing that because of what people will think of us. What will people think about me if I move whatever was on that top shelf and then I actually live like Jesus is on the top shelf of my life? And I will tell you this, that's actually an identifier that you're living your faith out. If you're worried about what people think of you and decisions you're making because you're following Jesus, that probably means you're on the right track. There's a lot of scenarios where you sacrifice things, or you put things aside, or you hang out with people you normally wouldn't hang out with, or you come on Wednesday nights when everybody else is hanging out and playing video games, or everybody else is at the practice, or everybody else is whatever. And they think you're weird for that. That's probably a good sign that if you feel that tension, that you're actually putting Jesus in the top spot. Because even people who followed Jesus and were in that room that night, when that lady came in and poured out what was most valuable to her to Jesus and said, this is not the Lord of my life, you are. People were making fun of her. People were picking on her. People were judging her and saying, what an idiot. She should have sold that and we could have done so much with that. And Jesus goes, knock it off. And know that Jesus has got your back too. When you make those decisions to do something different from the rest of the crowd, Jesus is saying, knock it off. Leave her alone. Leave him alone. He's doing something beautiful in my eyes. And that's actually following me into what it means to follow Jesus. Now, I want you to imagine yourselves. Not yourselves. It kind of sounds like I want you to imagine your shelf. No, your shelf. Listen to me. Imagine your shelf. You can't unhear it. I can't unhear it. Look at this shelf. What's on that? I can't stop laughing about this. You probably can't stop laughing either. We're having a moment. Let's just let the moment happen. Imagine your shelf. What's on your like top 3 shelves in your life? On that list. Look at that. See what's there. And I'm guessing when you put Jesus on the top shelf, something in your life has got to change. One of these examples I'm thinking about is like, if you put Jesus on the top shelf, that relationship, that dating relationship you're in probably doesn't work anymore because you can't follow Jesus and be in that relationship at the same time because there's sin involved or there's something that you know God doesn't want to be a part of your life involved in that thing. that's like pouring out $60,000 worth of perfume. You know what I'm saying? Like that's going to result in some sacrifice. Maybe for you, it is your activities or your sports or whatever. And if you shifted Jesus to be top shelf, things would have to change in your life. I love what Reba Mader said after this last year at CIY. What was communicated to you that you caught, internalized, and now are carrying with you? What would it be?
In one of the sermons, he said that it was like sports based, but he said you spend 2 hours every single day going to practice. Every single day you exert your body and you don't even think twice about it. Like you just go to practice and you do your work and then you go home. And he said, and how much time do you spend in the Bible? Yeah. And that really like caught me because I go to practice every day. Like I'm one of those people that doesn't even think about it. I go to practice, I come home and I go to bed. And just to think about putting 2 hours of my time into something that will last rather than something that's temporary. I mean, I'm going to college and I've spent countless hours on sports that I am not doing anymore. Like, for what? And so that really caught me because I don't spend 2 hours in my Bible every day. I don't spend 2 hours praying, and that's something that is going to last for eternity, the only thing that will last for eternity. And so
if you say that Jesus is the biggest thing in your life, look at your timetables and see if that's actually true. When do you actually practice your faith? Is Jesus actually top shelf? Is he actually getting a lot of your attention? Or is he just some sort of accessory that you put on the third shelf that looks good? It looks good on your shelf, so you're just like, I'll just leave that here. But that's not my main priority right now. Right now, it's looking good to other people. So that's going to be okay, so what happens when you don't look good to other people? Or what happens when you can't do those things anymore? That's the issue in worship. As we worship things that can be taken away, can change, can go whatever. Jesus will never be taken away from you. Jesus will never fade. He will last through it all. And he wants to walk with you through it all. You're not just putting up some sort of like Jesus shrine and like that's what you want up there. What you're putting on the top shelf is a relationship. I'm saying like, this is worth my time and attention because the way that this friendship with Jesus, this relationship with Jesus works is that I've actually got to talk to him. And I've got to listen to what he says and I've got to spend time with him. Otherwise, I'm just doing things for the sake of doing things. And Jesus wants so much more for you than that. And I think you see this, like you see him defending this woman who poured out the perfume saying, she did something so beautiful because she understands who I am. She understands our relationship. She understands that I have what she wants. And she's giving everything to be in that relationship with me, to have this moment with me. And people are bickering and people are making fun of her for it. But her and Jesus are good. You know? And then you see Judas, who, like, honestly, if I were to guess Judas's shelves, probably Jesus was maybe second shelf. Like, he was pretty far up there, right? But wealth and money. And did you see what happens when he worshiped wealth and money over Jesus? He betrayed Jesus to get wealth and money. And you'll find out later how that story ends. It wasn't good. What does this look like in your life? I want you to think of what that woman did and what Jesus said about it. He said she did what she could. I want you to think about where you're at right now in life. Maybe it's too much to ask you for everything. I don't know. Jesus does. Know that we're headed there. That eventually God is saying you're going to have to lose your life to find it. And to come and follow me, you're going to have to leave old things behind. But for right now, right where we are, today, starting to open up those hands, starting to flex that muscle of true worship, what's one thing that you could change? What's one thing that could move from top shelf to second shelf, just for now, so that you could see what it was like to actually put Jesus top shelf? I guarantee that will change your life. And you'll find more peace, more satisfaction, and more love and more beauty in your world if you didn't worship things that could fade, but instead you worshiped the God of the universe. I pray this for you. Like I said, this is where we're headed. We want to devote our whole lives to Jesus. But I want you to just think of your next right thing, your next step. What's the thing that you could do today? Give what you got. Talk about that in your groups now.